Okay, so we're going to look at question 7. And this question relates to sequences. So a sequence of figures is made from lines of unit lengths and dots. The lines form a series of octagons and squares, and the dots are placed at each vertex. So we have figure 1, figure 2, and figure 3, and you are required to use information about figure 3 to correctly draw figure 4. So let's study the pattern. So for the first pattern, we just have an octagon, but we don't have any squares added. Figure 2, we have 2 squares. Figure 3, we have 4 squares. So figure 4, you should have 6 squares added to it, plus an octagon. So you should have had something looking like this. Now let's move on to the next part, which is part B of the question. So in part B, you are given a table. Let's read part B. The number of dots D and the number of unit lines that form the perimeter of the shape P form a pattern. The values for D and P for the first 3 figures are in the table here, and you are required to study the pattern in each row for the table and complete the rows 1, 2, and 3. So in the first column we have the figure number starting from 1 to n, and in the second column here we have the number of dots, and third column we have the perimeter. So let's look at the number of dots and study this pattern. We have 8, 16, 24. That's the 8 times table. So if this is 4, 8 times 4 should be 32. So we can complete this part. That should be 32. And for this one we have 8, then 14, then 20. It's going up by 6. So that should be 26. And then now in part 2, you're required to complete what n should be here and the number of dots. So they gave you the perimeter. So we need to now have a look at this and use this information to figure out what's going on here. So if it's going up by 6, right? It's going up by 6. So we can find the nth term. So if it's going up by 6, you can write 6n, and then you look at this number, and figure out how big is this from bigger than 6. It's bigger than 6 by 2. If it's bigger, you add 2. So it's 6n plus 2. So the formula for the nth term formula for the perimeter would be 6n plus 2. You are given the perimeter, which is 86, so you need to equate this to 86. And then you can solve for n to figure out what should be here. So let's take 2 both sides, so that would be 84. So 6n is equal to 84, therefore n equals 14. Divide both sides by 6, so that's 14. Okay, so we know that this is the 8 times table. 8 times 1, 8 times 2, 8 times 3, 8. So all we need to do is to multiply 8 times 14 to get the dots. So, and 12. So for the nth term then, it's going to be 8n. 8n for this. And for the nth term for the perimeter, we already found it, which is 6n plus 2. Okay, let's look at part C. So in part C, you're given that for any figure n greater than 1, the number of dots D is greater than the perimeter. So D is greater than the perimeter, okay? That's the information given. It says determine the value of n of a figure for which the difference between D and P is 36. So the difference between D and P equals 36. Okay, so we already know that D the nth term for d is 8n, and we already know that the nth term for the parameter p is 6n plus 2. So with this, d is greater than p, we can write 8n is greater than 6n plus 2. So let's write that down. We're just using all of the information that is given to figure this out. So we would have 8n is greater than 6n plus 2. And this is from this here, right? That's from this information here. We write that. Okay. Next thing, d minus p. So we have d as 8n minus p, which is 6n plus 2. I'm going to put this in bracket because we have to treat it as a whole. 6n plus 2, and that must equal to 36. So from this we can simplify this and solve for n. So what we have there is 8n minus 6n. This minus here would change everything in the bracket, so that's going to be minus 2, and that must equal to 36. Okay? So upon simplifying this, what we get there is 2n is equal to, you add 2 both sides there as well, so that's 38. So divide both sides by 2, so n equals to 19, and that's the value of n. Okay? So here ends question 7. So that's question 7.